Our daughter Jessie loves playing detective.
A clue.
But since we discovered she has sensitive skin, we've been playing detective too.
We thought the problem was our puppy.
But it was actually our old detergent.
Aha.
So we switched to Tide Free and Gentle. Tide cleans better than the leading
Hear me?
competitive free detergent, and it doesn't leave behind irritating residues.
Plus,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. How are you doing?
Can. Good, good. How are you?
Oh, this Streamlabs thing is very stressful sometimes. It's just, I think
Yeah.
it's getting the hang of it is what it is.
Yeah.
It's a lot of technical stuff to take and figure out across the
Yeah.
board on top of, being nervous with this stuff. So,
Yeah, but you figure it out.
oh yes. Oh yes. So how's life been in the world of, all the coaching and stuff that you're doing?
Yeah, good. I haven't been doing too much over the last week or so. As you know, I had this hip operation not long ago, and that's taken quite a chunk of time out of what I would normally do. But I'm pretty much back to normal now. So last week there was a whole bunch of other stuff to do, but I'm really looking to start getting back into the groove this week now. So yeah. So I want to do a lot more videos for TikTok. I'm really enjoying your TikTok videos, by the way. They're all so good. So I want to do a lot more of those. And yeah, it's just knuckling down and getting on with it, as well as obviously doing my other coaching work and stuff. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's always very difficult when you're juggling multiple things. It's like this last
Yeah.
week, I had my 2-year-old for the whole week, and trying to be able to sit down in front of this computer was challenging at the least,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Maria, would you give yourself, introduce yourself to all the folks watching?
Okay, so I'm Maria McMahon. I'm a British certified clinical NLP therapist. I work solely with people now, men and women, to help them to recover from narcissistic abuse. I have a Facebook group for men, which is obviously how you know me, Ken. You met me first there. I have a Facebook group for women. Excuse me. And I've also written a book called The Top 50 Red Flags of Romantic Predators, How to Avoid the Narcissist Trap, which I highly recommend everyone get, especially if they are out dating and they're not sure what to look for. I've got it all covered in that book. And that's the very short version.
Yeah, so it gets, when it comes to this type of thing, especially I imagine with your expertise, it gets pretty technical and drawn out a little bit there, don't it?
Yeah, I tend to keep it short and sweet. I have a YouTube channel, as do you, although I haven't put anything new on in a while. You can find me on YouTube, on TikTok, obviously Facebook, LinkedIn, although I don't do so much on LinkedIn. So yeah, I'm fairly easy to find if you're looking for help with narcissistic abuse or support groups or whatever. Yeah.
I appreciate it. And I can tell everybody, as you heard, and possibly if you caught the last live stream, about a little over a year ago, today I fell victim to narcissism. I was absolutely left with no understanding of what went on, and many years of gaslighting and love bombing, just to be left to feel that I was the problem. There was nothing there, and let me tell you what, the fog, the temporary insanity, I guess I'm going to label it, is like none other. It's a abuse that is on an atomic level. I keep telling everybody. I mean, you literally go from knowing that you are a good person to questioning everything about yourself. You just don't know no more. And it's weird. It's like in this world of narcissism, the actual victim tends to stand alone, and everyone's pointing at him, and it really hurts. And that's one of the things that I wanted to draw on. Why I created this podcast is I spent, just like a lot of people out there, a lot of time scared to speak out, and it wasn't just because of what my person would do. It was because I wasn't sure if I was the problem. I wasn't sure if I was going to hurt somebody else through all this. And through time and therapy and talking with Maria here, who was a blessing, it took me 4 different therapists, to talk to, but the one that really got a hold of me was Maria. And for that, Maria, I really thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm absolutely delighted to have been able to help. And I'm so glad that you found the group. I know it's been massively helpful for you and for an awful lot of the guys in there. So to any guy who's watching, because men, as we've talked about in the previous one, really draw the short straw when it comes to this kind of abuse, because people just don't believe it. They don't understand it. They just don't think it's possible for full-grown badass men to be abused by a woman. It doesn't make sense to them. So they don't get a lot of understanding, and it's very difficult for them to speak out or even try to get support. So if anyone is watching, please come and join us in my Facebook group. You'll be made very welcome. And there's a lot of guys there, like Ken, who've got a lot of wisdom. And as I've also said, I'm so impressed with how seriously you're taking this advocacy work with this channel that you're doing, with all the TikTok videos and everything you've got to say. And I've watched a lot of your TikTok videos. Really has value. It really talks to the truth of what's going on. And you know, your videos are so inspiring. So I recommend people to go and find you on your TikTok as well, The Light in the Darkness, and watch them, because I support everything you say. It's all really good advice.
You know, it's weird because I've always considered myself an amazing man. And I had different little habits that, you know, you get scared to speak out about that develop through childhood traumas and stuff like that. But a narcissist will take and amplify all those things when you confide that stuff into them, and you grow scared. All these things even more, because while you're in the process of working on yourself in life, they're not. They're in the process of exploiting you.
Absolutely.
Because they themselves are weak, and they're so good at this manipulation tactic and victim and all this stuff that I found that there was no way, where to turn. And I know there's a lot of people out there in this world right now that are going through this, and I can tell you, and Maria, I don't know how much you agree with me on this. It's something I've been kind of researching. I'm finding out in today's society, there is a plethora, if not majority, of women that actually run with very strong narcissistic traits, if not they're full narcissists. And it's a scary thing in the dating world.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of them out there. And I have a friend here in Spain who is looking for love, and he's been on every dating site there is. And he ended up actually dating 3 different narcissists, one after the other. And he was just very lucky that he happens to be a very good friend of mine. So I was able to help him through that. He got my book, and he said, now I can spot them a mile off. And he said, they're absolutely rife on all these, you know, Plenty of Fish, Tinder, all of those Match. He said it's just riddled with them, and he can spot them a mile off. So if you know the flags, you know what to look for. And it's pretty easy with, you know, on the dating sites, if you're out on the dating. One of the things that happened with him early on in a relationship with the second one is he and I would often go out for a beer together, and he's the kind of person that changes his profile on like his WhatsApp or whatever. He depends on what he's doing. He will often update it. So we took a nice picture of us having a beer together, and he put that up on his status. Now I'm 20 years older than this guy. You know, we are just friends. And he put it on updated it on his status. And then this girlfriend, when she saw it, she said, what are you doing with another woman on your profile? And he said, well, you know, it's my English friend, Maria. She's, you know, he told her, like, she's 20 years older than me, and we're just friends, you know. And she said, no, if you put a picture of any woman on your update on your profile, it should be of me. So straight away, he saw that as a red flag. And then what he would do subsequently is he would send, often when he, you know, that you share pictures and stuff, he would send one with him and maybe with me, or maybe with a friend of his from his home country, and immediately the reaction would be negative. Who's this woman? Why are you sharing a picture? And he said, that's just the biggest red flag. If they say that and they react like that, and they've only just literally met you on a dating app, that's it. Swipe the other way, whichever way. I don't know, is it left or right? I don't go on these sites myself. So knowing those red flags to look for It's really, really helpful for people who are out there. But yeah, you're right. It's absolutely rife with them. Absolutely rife.
And that's one of the discussions I wanted to have today with you is I've learned that there's a lot of especially in today's dating world with the newer generations coming on up that have okayed through gaslighting themselves and other people. It's kind of spread through society that it's an acceptable behavior. And these are actual full red flags that state, hey, I'm hurt. And that's something I wanted to be able to talk with you a little bit about today is identifying some of these red flags and the covert red flags, because I consider them covert nowadays because society has kind of adapted to them in a way that they've made it normal and okay. They've made it acceptable.
In what way do you mean acceptable? Just give me a little example of what you mean there so that we're on the same page.
Well, for instance, the way I've learned and the way I've identified through a lot of different things, we tend to use sexuality first in dating. So one of the things I've veered away from when it comes to talking to friends, making friends, or any of that stuff is the woman that has to show her cleavage. She has to have all these attention. Because to me, that's a covert red flag that says I'm going to basically kind of use my sexuality to draw you in.
To attract you, and you're right. So I know what you're talking about now. And the thing is that now, like with all the social media, particularly like Instagram and TikTok and Snapchat and all of those, it is all very overt, the sexuality. It's in your face. It's like skimpily dressed and all this pouting lark that really gets on my nerves. And that is to draw you in. And it is acceptable. And because one's doing it, the others are doing it. So it's just very, very much the thing they do. Yeah. So I don't think that's enough of a red flag because, as you say, it's so accepted now. Everyone's doing it.
Yes.
And it tends to be the younger women that do it as well.
Well, that's the weird thing. I'm actually seeing it bleed up in the generations here and there now.
Yeah,
in other words, you get the mom that wants to vicariously live through the daughter, so the mom's now wearing short skirts, all these things.
Yeah, that's definitely a red flag. That's what my mother used to call mutton dressed as lamb.
And don't get me wrong. I am the type of guy that, it's a beautiful view. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't show me that they're looking to give me their actual emotional side. And it's other things like I hear a lot of times when you're scanning through these dating sites, another one that I keep seeing, and it's something I'm actually generating a video over, is you have to accept my toxic. You have to accept this, that, and the other thing in order to be with me. And that's something that's commonly going around over here in America is you'll get men and women that are like, I'm toxic. You just have to, dance with my demons per se. And it's like, wait a minute, you got toxic traits. You have all these things. You want me to love you past it? I mean, basically you want to hurt me and it be okay.
Yeah, that's a massive, massive red flag. And if somebody's coming out and saying something like that, and they're proud of it, then give them a wide berth, because you do not want toxic in your life. And if they're advertising it like that, then they sure as hell are going to be toxic, entitled, and that's like, I don't give a damn about anyone else but myself. And you don't have to be okay with it. So please don't ever think, or anyone watching this, don't ever think you have to be okay with toxic, because you absolutely do not.
Exactly. And that's the whole thing in today's society. I think a lot of times through our childhood traumas, we get left in these cycles that have, that have basically plagued our adulthood, and we're seeking basically anything to not feel lonely no more.
Yeah. So much of it is rooted in childhood trauma, which is why I always do inner child work with every client I work with, because there's always that wounded inner child. But you were talking about the red flag. So let's say, taking that initial one out of the equation, when you start talking to the person and getting to know them, you will see red flags very, very quickly, because narcissists are actually not very good at hiding. When you know what to look for, they're very good at pulling the wool over your eyes with the love bombing and the adoration and all that in the beginning, which makes you feel like on top of the world. Do you remember what Brian said last week about how he felt? And I'm sure you felt the same way at some point. But it's when you know what you're looking for, then you will not get hoodwinked the same way. So initially, the things they're liable to do mostly is the love bombing.
Yes.
They will bombard you with texts. They will want to spend every minute of, your time with you focusing on them. And it'll all be, oh, you're fantastic. You're my dream man or woman. You're the best thing I've ever met, blah, blah, blah. That is a big red flag. And if it's like bombarding you with it or bombarding you with text, and then there'll be things like, they will expect you to respond very quickly. And if you don't, and this happened with my friend as well, because he used to show me all these texts that she'd send him. And he had a hell of a time trying to get rid of her as well. He did it successfully in the end, but he said, like, shit, that was really scary. But if he didn't respond, like within about 2 minutes, she would be, why aren't you responding? Why are you ignoring my messages? Who are you with? What are you doing? And he's out busy working. And he's like, I haven't got time to spend every fucking minute of the day, excuse my French, on, messaging you. I'll message you when she didn't like that. So you'll get this kind of controlling, demanding behavior. And if you put boundaries in, like, please don't text me after, say, 10 o'clock at night, because maybe you've got to get up early in the morning. Test them out with these boundaries, because guaranteed, if you say, please don't text me after 10, they will text you after 10. Oh, but I just had to message you. Oh, I've been thinking about you all day. I couldn't stop thinking about you. I just had to be in touch with you. Or they'll call you. I had to hear your voice. You get all this. And the red flags stack up very, very quickly in the beginning when you know what you're looking for.
Yes.
So how do they behave around other people? Are they... The grandiose ones tend to be very rude and dismissive to, waiters and people in service positions, like in the supermarket. They kind of look down on people. The grandiose ones, that's very obvious. But if it's a victim, shy, vulnerable type of narcissist, you won't see that kind of behavior so much. They might sort of say it in a snidey way to you when no one's around, but they're not the same kind of, overt, just rude, looking down your nose at everyone. Yeah. So really in the beginning, the big ones are the love bombing and this needing your attention all the time. And if you're seeing a lot of that in the beginning, that is a huge red flag. So you're going to need to be on the lookout for all manner of other red flags that will show up, and things will start to feel off. And number one red flag in my book, as I think I mentioned last time, is trust your gut.
Yes.
Because everyone I've talked to, everyone I've worked with, bar none, all said, I should have listened to my gut.
That's where I'm at.
Knew something was off.
Add another one to that. I knew something was off. See, I've always been a very calm, very gentle guy, but I also have that assertive, masculine way about me too. Don't get me wrong. I know how to balance it, I guess you'd say, but I've always been a guy that used to be, I protect my peace. And mine came in right away with, an absolute attitude and temper and all these things, and there was no level of communication you can get through to them. And then all of a sudden, and this is how things kind of progressed, and I didn't realize what was happening, because it appeared after a while that they were holding their anger and doing something with it, but I realized they were just bottling it up.
Yeah, because they're fighting hard to maintain that facade, to keep that mask on, to keep you hooked until they know they've really got you. And then they start to show their true.
Oh, yes. And now
your trauma bond. They're just super manipulative.
Yes.
So early stages, if you start seeing the love bombing, then you need to get the hell out of Dodge, Now,
the thing is, I learned too, and that was something I came to you about at first, because I was like, hey, Maria, love bombing, it's got to be, she had to have been there for me. I mean, she gave me such and such amount of money in the beginning, and I seem to have lost Maria. Oh, there she is. All right. And I was like, she gave me such and such amount of money to put towards my business. How could someone do such of a thing and it be not real? And, I learned there's multiple different types of love bombing. And I guess my biggest thing that I've, developed in my mind is there's, sexual love bombing, there's financial, there's emotional, there's soul, there's all that.
How quickly they can figure out what your sort of hot buttons are. So if you're, highly sexed and you really enjoy sex, they will use that.
Yes.
If you are very spiritual. All of a sudden, they'll be very spiritual, exactly like you are. A lot of them can be financially well off, and they can, love bomb you with cash, invest in your business. But then it becomes very toxic trying to disentangle yourself from that ultimately.
Yeah, and that was a lot of the
there is.
big thing with those, that was the red flags that were so covert. I overlooked it, because it was like, this is the perfect person. This is the person I could spend the rest of my life with.
Yeah.
And then my empathy overlooked all the red flags. Plus, I won't lie, when I first got into that relationship, I had just left another narcissist that I didn't realize till this day was a narcissist, and it absolutely wrecked me. So I was toxic myself.
Yeah.
And
you're also very vulnerable when you've left a relationship, and particularly one that's abusive. You are more vulnerable because you're feeling down and broken and hurt, and they just seem to have this radar for this, so they hone in on you and they know how to just get under your skin very, very quickly. And they do it with that love bombing and with that mirroring and all that fake empathy,
So I guess the best way I could put it is, if looks too good to be true, it likely is.
Absolutely. It absolutely is. And the reason, though, that you overlook the red flags and don't trust your gut is because you want it to be true, because it feels so damn good in the beginning, because it's fantastic to be love bombed, and you're getting all the dopamine and the hot, sexy chemicals flying around in your brain, and you're feeling fantastic. So you just so want it to be true.
Yes.
That you do.
And
everybody
you gaslight
does.
Yourself. You gaslight yourself beyond your gut feeling and all that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm just being oversensitive. Oh, I know she's fine or he's fine. You do. You brush it under the carpet. And then the next thing you know, you're knee deep in this horribly toxic relationship.
Yeah.
But everyone says it. And the only way is to know the flags and to listen to your gut.
Yes.
If it feels off, it's off. There's something wrong. Trust your gut. Always.
Yes. That was my biggest thing, was not being able to trust my gut. And the thing that it was is, being someone like me, I've been through a lot in life. And I've always been a person that was always, especially after a certain point, I want to grow. I want to do better. And it don't just happen overnight, but I was trying to do better. So I knew that with all these things that I'd been through in my past, good and bad, self-inflicted or not, that I had grown. So when I look at this person, I'm sitting there going, if I can do it, they can. And that was one of my biggest, most ultimate demises, I feel, is my empathy for believing that anybody and everybody can do what I do.
Yeah, and they can't. You cannot, especially not when it's a narcissist. But of course, this is another thing, is when the problems start to show up, you try so hard to be more understanding. And they know that. And then they'll make it all about, well, they have emotional issues, but you've got to be more understanding about that. And they weave this web of lies and deceit around you. And you get more and more drawn in, thinking, well, it must be me, and I've got to be a better man, or I've got to be a better woman. I've got to try harder. I've got to love her more, and I've got to help her fix her. I've got to help heal her. This is a trap so many people who get involved with narcissists fall into, because so many of you are empaths or highly sensitive people.
Yes.
And so when you've got that combination, you've got someone who's going to absolutely suck every single bit of that out of you until you keep giving and giving and giving until there's nothing left, until you're a complete emotional wreck.
Exactly. And that's exactly what got me, through my, and it's funny because everyone turns around and they want to take and always holler victim, 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 all these things. And I learned that, wait a minute, even before this, I was somebody that's, that used to preach, I'm responsible for anything and everything that comes in and out of my life. And I mean, we can take this to a technical basis to where, I'm not responsible for that car accident. That guy hit me, but when it comes to what I allow in my life, I am responsible for the narc entering my life because I had a lack of boundaries. I was unhealed and I didn't recognize the red flags. Now, am I going to hurt be mad at myself over it anymore? No, because here's the thing I do understand. And this is the same thing with a lot of you out there. You have to understand that a lot of you victims or survivors never realized what narcissism was. This is
Yeah.
something I'm learning has just really started to surface. And it's so scary because even a lot of the courts don't recognize narcissistic
No,
behavior.
no, they don't.
I happen to be lucky to somewhat live in an area where it is a small court, but a lot of our lawyers around here carry psychology degrees.
Right.
So they're starting to, they're kind of on top of it and understanding. So I learned
Mm-hmm.
right away when I went to go deal with a lawyer to ask them if they were familiar with narcissistic abuse,
Right.
you know, and that's like I said, it's just a scary thing all around because it's like a
Yeah.
really new kind of thing
It
that's
is,
surfacing.
yeah, and in those fields, which I think we mentioned as well last time we talked, like the police and the authorities and the court system, judges, all of that, just are not educated about it.
No, no, not
I
at
mean,
all.
coercive control is recognised in the UK, but it's very new. It's only a few years it's been law, and it's very hard to prove. It's even worse which is why you shouldn't say he's a narcissist or she's a narcissist. You've got to try and get around it a bit more subtly, but you're very lucky if you can find a lawyer who has got some knowledge about it,
Yeah.
or is at least willing to look into it, because if they don't, then you're whistling in the wind, really. If you've got a divorce lawyer who has no clue and they just think, oh, this is just a standard divorce, it's acrimonious, but hey ho,
Yes.
they just don't know what they're doing.
And
So
that is a very difficult section. It's very frustrating as the survivor, victim. A
yeah,
lot of you guys out there, you'll hear me, refer to you as a victim, and it's a lot, especially in the beginning. You're going to take on that victim phase. The narcissist will never leave the victim phase, ever. They will always be the victim, and they'll only take accountability for a very small section, just enough to get people to side with them.
to sympathize and make them think that they are the victim, which
Yes.
of course we know they're not, because they don't take accountability for anything. So that's another red flag. Don't take accountability. Everything's always your fault. You've always got to be the one to give and change and bend in the breeze, and they just swan off and do exactly what they like. They don't put anything into it.
Yes, exactly. Let's see here. All right. Thought I had I put a thing out for somebody, today, send out a message request. So I thought one actually came in. That's one of the biggest things I want to touch base on. We always talk about red flags of entering into a relationship and all that stuff. But one of the things I'm noticing out in this world is there's not enough education for people to be able to notice the red flag and be able to, put a difference and be able to see which side is the narcissist and which side is the survivor or the victim. And there's usually red flags that come along with this. So therefore, I kind of want to take and create that divide or put that education on out there that, when people are looking at a situation, they can say, oh, wait a minute, they're not the actual, victim, they're the narcissist, and be able to identify red flags that bring that forward to them. Does that make sense?
Well, it does, but I think it's always about knowing the red flags in the beginning and understanding what narcissistic abuse is.
I do agree
But of course,
with that.
the big problem, and why they get away with it and why it's still proliferating so much, is because you don't know it until you're in it. It's not until you've gone through all the pain and suffering and trauma that you go to Google to try and find something that's going to make sense of it for you. And then you come across narcissists and narcissistic personality disorder, and then you start digging into it.
Yes.
So it's unfortunate, because most people who've not been in it just have no understanding of what it might be. And even if they did know some flags, I think they could still very easily be sucked in by a narcissist, because, as you say, it can be so covert. The abuse, the manipulation can be so covert in the beginning that you just wouldn't see it.
And that's the scary thing about today's society, because especially, women, the female, gender can really play into the covert side very, very well, because men are naturally programmed to protect women.
Yeah, exactly.
Society is naturally programmed to do the same.
Yeah, and as we said before, Ken, women will be believed much more quickly than I mean, I've just had a message today from a guy. He's literally just joined the group, and his partner, wife, is she's a doctor, and she injured herself because he's kind of laying down the rules and wanted to get out, and she's just being really, really massively toxic, and he wanted to get out, and she had injured herself, and she went to the police and told the police that he had done it.
Oh, Lord.
And it's cost him, I think he said, like $100,000 in lawyer's fees so far to try and defend himself. This is the kind of shit they're capable of. A
literally, narcissist will actually use truth. In other words, things that are from your past that you confided in them, as long as lie to make you look bad to cover up their wrongdoings.
Oh, absolutely.
It's
absolutely. Yeah, it is. And I've always said, I think I have a meme out there about it, that your secrets are never safe with a narcissist. You never want to confide anything to them. But of course, you don't know that. In the beginning, you get this person that you think is fantastic and it's your soulmate or however you want to call it. And I talk about this in the book as well. They are trying to get all your deepest, darkest, most painful secrets out of you so that they can use them against you. Yes. And if you're not the type to be forthcoming in the beginning, which you might not be, what they will often do, and this is where the covert manipulation comes in, is they will start sharing with you stories about their painful childhood, which may or may not be true. I take anything a narcissist says with a pinch. They may not have had a horribly abusive childhood. They may have, but so they're often, and quite often, I do know this from people I've worked with, it's all made up stuff anyway. None of it is provable or none of it's true. But they do this so that when it activates the law of reciprocal altruism. So they've shared something deeply personal with you. This is how we're programmed as people. You feel then, oh, I've got to give something back. So there you go. They open the little doorway. Oh, well, yeah, I'm so sorry you had an abusive childhood or that happened to you. I know what it's like because this happened to me. And there you go. You start sharing. And they're so empathetic and kind and understanding and all of that in the beginning that you feel like, you can trust them. And you probably share more stuff. I mean,
and that's
people
the
do.
Side. It's kind of like they're confessing everything to you. And they're trusting you with theirs. So you really feel like you're getting that mutual reciprocation in that relationship.
Exactly. And that's why they do it. It's not to build a bond and because they're understanding and loving. It's not. It's purely to manipulate you into spilling your secrets.
Yeah. So that they can leverage them against you later when they can't keep up to their end of the deal. Still this day, as a matter of fact, it's funny. I'll share this a little bit. I had to return my son to his mom yesterday. And we talk about ideas and situations of things that show, how to identify. We normally text and say, hey, we're set up for pickup and we'll take and do all that stuff. So like if I have the child, she'll message me saying, hey, I'll be there for pickup. And we usually do that about 5-6 hours ahead of time so that no one's sitting there wondering. Just a matter of respect. This person is constantly showing up late. They're constantly showing up. And like this text message came 30 minutes before drop off. It's those types of things that they like to push around to control your emotions. It's trigger controlling. So when you look at, and it's funny because they kept trying to mark me as being the controlling person. As I was like, hey, I got somebody coming with me. I'm on medication, hasn't regulated yet. And it was instantly, well, I don't want to see this. And it's funny because I've learned narcissists have a very toxic attachment to their victims. It's like, I don't want them, but nobody else can have them either.
Exactly. Yeah. That's very true. Because they want to control you and own you. And it's not like when you break up with a normal couples break up, you kind of feel hurt, you get over it, you move on. You want the best for that person and they want the best for you. That's how most breakups usually go that way, or a lot of them. But with a narcissist, they are usually already lined up with someone else because they have to have narcissistic supply. Their very existence depends on on it. So they will always have someone lined up. But woe betide you if you then get another girlfriend or another boyfriend, because then all hell breaks loose. Because how dare you? Because in their mind, you don't have a right to a life without them. You don't have a right to another girlfriend. You don't have a right to happiness.
And they don't want to see you elevate without them, because that makes them look bad. That makes them look like they might have been the problem. And I learned that in that dark psychology that they have in their head, it's all about covering up who they are.
Yeah, of course. It is.
And it's funny because for the last year, I've had a couple of friends that I've kept at arm's length. When I came into all this stuff, I wanted to heal. And in this year, like you're aware, I've gone back and forth with I'm going to call her Nex,
Yeah, the Nex, yeah.
I've gone back and forth with her. And the last time that I left, when I sat there in that place, I looked at her and told her, I'm not sure, but I'm pulling away from all this. I'm falling out of love with you, and I don't know if I can stop it. And towards the end, she decided to talk to some more men. When I was gone out trying to take in work, and some real bad stuff happened, and I had a person that was just there to talk to. And it's funny because this person has looked at me, and through all this trauma has stood right by my side. And you look at a good thing and you push it away because you're scared. And for me, it was, I wanted to heal. I was scared to take and repeat because I was stuck in that mentality of, you are what you attract,
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, wait a minute. Am I the narcissist? So here we go in this, spiral again. And it's so crazy to see these red flags, and the controllingness, and that's where my story was with, meeting up with her yesterday. Afterwards, she got upset because I had my friend drive. And she's sitting there saying that I was trying to control the situation, that I was trying to control her. And I simply was, put it as, no, you can bring whoever you need to bring with you if you need to. It's at some point you're going to have to get used to it. I understand it hurts, but in it, all these things, she gaslit me right away. It's about, my son being taken and picked up and taken care of by another woman. And it's funny. I read right through it. No, it's not. No, it's not. It has nothing to do with that. I read right into it. It was her possession over me.
Yeah, of course. And control. It's always about control.
And when you learn,
and what I generally,
go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, what I generally advise is to just do what we call the grey rock technique. You don't argue with them. You don't, obviously you know her well enough and you thought that was worth a shot, and it was. But normally you just try not to get involved in any kind of discussion, debate, whatever with them.
Yes.
Well, other than saying, well, I'm sorry if it's upset you, or I'm sorry if it was inconvenient to you, or I'm sorry if it doesn't make you happy. Just really bland statements that can't ever be taken as offensive, but you're not being combative. Oh, I'm sorry that you didn't like that.
And they'll play your empathy, because mine sat there saying, you don't care about my feelings, and I'm not that kind of person. I care about everybody's feelings. And
she
I
knows
had to
that.
tell her, at one point I used to care about your feelings, but now I choose me. Now I choose what's good for me. And the one thing I was so proud of myself through is I didn't let the emotion control me.
Right. Good for you.
I was in the end able to stand my ground. It was done and over, all those things. And it's an amazing thing, folks. Once you start to see all these things, you learn what psychological projection is. You learn all this stuff, where they take all their wrongs and project it over onto you, and they're very convincing with it too. But it's obvious enough. You probably picked up on it while it was in the relationship, where you came to talk to them about something that you had a problem with, and 2-3 arguments later, they said it was you that was, that had that problem.
The word salad, the gaslighting, yeah, absolutely. And that's what they do. And they do this word salad, which is talking around and round in circles until you're like dizzy with it. You just don't know, how did we get from wherever A to where we are now, because it's not making any sense. And you just get confused.
Yep.
This is why so many people come to me and come to the group and say, you know, I'm in a fog. I feel like I'm so confused all the time. I can't focus. I can't think. And this is because they've literally scrambled with your brain, you know. And this is why we also always recommend no contact. As the number one rule and goal for healing really is when you break up, go no contact, because you need to give yourself that mental space.
Yes, because
so
that's the only way the fog is going to clear.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're literally in
a
temporary insanity position, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, you are, because you're not thinking straight. You are confused. You are trying to make sense of it. So cognitively, emotionally, physically often, you know, you're just really, really scrambled from it.
Yeah.
But giving yourself the distance, physical and geographical, as much as you can, but just that no contact, block everywhere, and just give yourself a bit of space. You know, that's one of the most important things you can do to start healing. Because we were going to talk about healing, weren't we? And that's a long spectrum. I mean, where you are now is way, way further than an awful lot of people, even people I work with, aren't where you are, because you've been able to recognize your own culpability, for want of a better word, in the process.
Yes.
And that is something you only get to when you're very far down the line of healing.
And that's, you know, the thing is with that healing too is, and I want everybody to know, you're going to fall.
Yeah.
You're going to have those moments where you fall, and don't let nobody tell you that that's bad. I learned that just before this last go round, just before yesterday hit, that I sat with high anxiety for like 3 days. And my anxiety was over me knowing that I had to let go all the way and knowing it was coming, but I couldn't. And then all of a sudden, snap. It was gone. The anxiety left, and I had let go.
Because you'd made that decision that enough is enough and I can't do this anymore. And that's one of the things that I talk about as really a first step to healing. Because, you know, the first step with dealing with a narcissist is finding out that this is what you're dealing with. This is a narcissist. This is a mental disorder. Yes. And the big hurdle for most people right in the beginning when they learn that is getting their head round, oh my God, this is what I've been dealing with. And that is, there's shock, there's denial, there's anger, there's sadness, there's all these emotions that you have to go through right in the beginning before you can even think about healing. Yes. You've got to process all this. And then once you realize, okay, this is a thing, this is what I've been dealing with, it isn't going to change. I have to get better. I've got to start healing, or I've got to get out. You've got to make that decision that I'm going to do whatever it takes to heal myself, to get out of this relationship.
I'm going to put the energy into me. And that's the thing about self-reflection. You know, that's one of the things that I say is a red flag if you want to tell the difference between who the victim is and who the narcissist is to pay attention to what type of growth the person's doing. Because a narcissist will do things and act. In other words, they'll go to the gym. Well, of course, you know, they want to take and achieve that next supply. You know, they'll do all those things, and it can be, you know, covertly seen as, oh, look at them growing. You know, but the victim or survivor a lot of times will put the energy into themselves. And I mean, psychologically, they'll go to mend those broken spots. They'll take in, they'll self-reflect, they'll deeply, and I mean deeply self-reflect and start fixing all those errors. And that's one of the things I noticed. At least that's what worked for me. I know I can be an exception in some cases, but that's what worked for me.
I think for quite a few of the people I've worked with, and I've worked with quite a lot of guys as well, as you know, there is that element of needing to reflect, needing to unpack it all, unravel it all, and see, how did this happen to me? Why did it happen to me? Is it a result of a toxic childhood? Have there been several relationships with narcissists? As you said, in your case, you'd gone from one straight into another. Very, very common.
Yes.
But it's so you make that decision, I'm going to heal, and then you find support groups, you get a therapist, and you start to do the work. But it does require introspection, self-reflection, and eventually getting to that point where you realize that you allowed it. And I've always said a narcissist can only abuse because there is an enabler, and that is in no way blaming the person who is being abused. I don't mean it, but they cannot abuse without somebody allowing them to.
They have to have the
And
power.
it's very, very complex, because the people mostly who I've worked with and who've been with narcissists have had emotionally abusive upbringing. So they haven't been built basically with that strong sense of self-love. Because if you have a strong sense of self-love, which you now know, Ken,
Yes.
you will not accept that crap from anyone.
Exactly. And that's where I was at.
Just
You know,
no, you'll be like,
I had a different level of
boundaries,
self-love before. It was more like, look, you're not going to be disrespectful to me. But for my wife, my ex-wife, I'd move those boundaries around, because this is my person. I love this person.
Yeah.
I want to
Yeah.
give them the chance. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. What if I'm seeing it wrong? All those things, you know, they you know, and I'd get really deep in depth, and that's where it really got me. I'd sit there in my head for hours trying to decipher what was real, what wasn't. Did I do right? Did I do wrong? Is this what they're saying? Is it real? And it was all those things, you know. Am I truly just being insecure? Well, no. She was talking to an ex. They were talking about their sexual past and wanting to meet up again. I had every right to feel the way I did. That was a matter of disrespect.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
And the
And
fact
this
that she wanted to hide it made me feel worse. I had that right.
This is, absolutely. But this is one of the things as well, that when you do get through healing, you've got to look at how you're going to protect yourself in future.
Yes.
And obviously, I think we talked a bit last time about it as well, understanding, you know, your core values, your deal breakers, your boundaries, and having very strong boundaries in place. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to be rigid and inflexible in everything the rest of your life.
And that's where I see a lot of people go wrong.
Yeah.
Once they've been in this, they handle everything with such hatred. And it's one of the things I was so proud of myself with, is I didn't have to be hateful towards her. I just stood my ground. And I gave the same respect that I'd want given, even though technically she didn't deserve it and she wasn't giving it to me. I still gave it because that's who I am.
Because that's who you are. Yeah, that's your level of integrity, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, well done you. Well done you. Because that's the thing. You don't want them to destroy the person you are, even though they do their damnedest to break you down when you're in the relationship. Enough of you, there's a strong part in everyone that wants you to be healed and whole and happy. I believe that, and we tap into that when we do healing work. It's like, bring that person, bring that part, that real genuine part that deserves love and happiness. Bring that, you know, bring that warrior to the battle.
Yeah.
Really, that's what you need to do when you come to healing. And that self-love is so important. And of course, we're not talking about the vain self-love, the narcissist self-love. We're just talking about that genuine respect and love for yourself as a human being that deserves the kind of respect you give to other people.
Yeah,
that's what you deserve.
The type of self-love that, you know, when the victim was stepped in, they were trying to give to the other person. That's what they wanted back. That's the self-love that they needed.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, they needed to be able to give it to themselves.
Yeah. And it's complicated. It's very, very complicated. Because as I say, with healing from this, you know, you've got to start with the processing. First of all, realizing, figuring out this is something, it's narcissistic personality disorder. Then you've got to process it all. Yes. And that takes time. And then you've got to find a support group. Such a great thing to do, because it makes such a difference to know that you're not alone and that there are other people there that get it. And suddenly you start reading the post and it's like light bulbs are going off all over the place. And then, you know, there are many different paths to healing. Some people get a therapist or a counselor or whatever. Some people might go to their church minister. Some people just kind of work it out through themselves. And it's just finding what's the right path for you. But it's really important to have that knowledge that I'm going to heal from this. I can heal from this. I will heal from this.
Yes.
It's not a life sentence.
And you got to give yourself the time. You know, one of the things I turn around, I've been preaching to a lot of people lately, is the first step is being okay and embracing being alone. That's the first
goodness
step.
me. Yeah. Yeah. It's the most positive self-love thing you can do, to say, I'm okay alone. I don't need a man in my life, or I don't need a woman in my life. Right now, I'm okay where I'm at, and really being okay with where
Yes.
you're at.
Not just
And when you're in
gaslighting
that
yourself,
place,
because I see a lot of people that gaslight themselves and tell them, and
yeah,
it seems like that's the
yeah,
biggest thing I'm seeing everywhere anymore is there is a lot of self-gaslighting in this world going on. A
yeah, yeah,
lot. And
yeah,
they,
there is,
they know right from wrong, and they'll gaslight themselves, saying that they're doing something, right because it's them, but they hide it, which is telling
yeah,
you that they know that it's wrong.
yeah,
They don't
exactly.
truly believe
Yeah.
what they're saying.
That's very true. That's very true. So yeah, it's a complicated old process, but it's not a life sentence. And I know for people who are really in the thick of it now, if they've left and they're trauma bonded, that's just so horrible that they feel like I'm never going to feel good again. I'm never going to feel right again. I want people to know that you will get past it one way or another. You'll
Yes.
find a way through it because it won't stay forever. You
I'll,
will get past it.
I'm a strong enough man that, and through all this healing, and I, something I wanted to bring on up today because there's a lot of people out there I learned too, that through the, part of the surviving and being a victim, that they do a lot of bad stuff along the ways, and they don't realize that that temporary insanity is real.
Yeah.
They carry guilt, and it's funny because I had a gentleman, I think it was last week, reach on out to me. He's like, "You were talking about, temporary insanity." He goes, I said, "Yes." I goes, it's literally like a temporary insanity, Mark. He goes, I actually followed my narc around. I stalked him.
Right.
I says,
Yeah.
"You know something?" I says, there's probably a reason for it. He goes, "Well, she had said this, that, and the other thing, and they didn't give me any closure, and something just didn't seem right, and I don't know why. I knew I shouldn't do it, but just something kept going, and the only way I could ease the pain of anxiety was to go do this, to go take and get
Yeah.
closure." And I'm sitting
Yeah.
there going, "I get it, I understand." And it's funny
Yeah.
because in the very beginning, I did the same thing. Mine
Yeah.
actually gaslit me into believing this. It was, I feel like I'm, someone's controlling me. I feel like someone's controlling my brain.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here going, okay, so what is it? Is it, someone's, literally, like got control of her somehow, through human trafficking? Who knows what it could be? Drug addiction, whatever. And I was like, this is my person. I promised, through all things that I will fight for my person. And then all
Yeah.
of a sudden I realized, through talking to you, it just clicked. And I was done. I was like, okay, yeah, just let it go.
Yeah.
And I let it
And that's
go.
it. And that relief, that feeling of relief, even though it's not over, you're not out of it. You've made that decision.
Yes.
I'm done. I'm done. And you get a relief from that.
And I
And
think
that's
that,
what makes it possible to
and that's
start moving forward.
exactly. And I think that's what is hurting. I think actually in a lot of senses, social media is actually hurting the definition of narcissism and what it can do, because both sides can display the very same things. Because I've seen cases where the narcissist will go stalk. Like mine stalks all my social media. Mine
Yeah.
has friends always jumping in, doing this, doing that, doing the other thing
Yeah.
to this day. And I'm sitting here going, okay, okay, okay. So I can understand how society can't find the dividing lines, because sometimes they
Yeah.
blur. And it's important for everyone to
Yeah.
understand there's a such thing called narcissistic fleas. And
Yeah.
those narcissistic fleas will rub off onto
Yeah.
the victim. And through
Yeah.
all these things that are happening
Yeah.
within this atomic mind mess that they're in, they will
Yeah.
spiral. They're kind of not even them.
Yeah, because I think that's something we touched on briefly as well last week, wasn't it, Ken? That you said, can some of their behavior rub off on you and you start behaving that way?
Oh, yes.
And as I said, in your effort to constantly help them and all of that, you're constantly modifying your behavior, and the goalposts are always being moved. So you're moving further and further away all the time from who you are as a person, your core values,
Yes.
until, as you say, you're gaslighting yourself. You've bent and twisted yourself into a pretzel so many times you don't know which end is up anymore.
And this right now, folks,
You're not acting in the integrity that you normally would be. So, and this makes me think of reactive abuse. That's another hot button that's out
yes,
there as well. And it's so
yes,
easy to see why it happens. because people do it out of sheer anger and frustration with what they've been dealing with. But the minute they do it, the narcissist is all over them like a rash. Oh, you see, he's crazy, or she's crazy, or see how abusive he is. Look at that. I told you, see, he's crazy.
Yeah.
And you're there like caught in the headlights with it.
Yeah.
And this is what they do.
I actually had to hide my therapy place where I was going to therapy on. I actually had, and this is one of the bad things that and this is how it controls a victim, is through shame and all these things just as well.
Yeah.
That's what creates that anxiety, is because of all the things that you were kind of pushed into. And it's like, oh my God, what am I going to do if people find out?
Yeah.
Well, you know something? I'm not ashamed. I understand what I was against. And if I got to face those consequences, I got to face those consequences, and I understand what it was, and society may not, but you know something? I'm going to go make my mark out there. I'm going to go make sure that people understand, and I'm going to build myself, and I'm going to do all these things. I'm good now. And we got to go through those phases and stages. And the biggest thing is getting people to understand what those red flags are.
Red flags are,
I can't state it enough. Identifying red flags and setting healthy boundaries is the only way you're going to protect yourself, and give yourself time in the dating process as well. Don't just move them in.
For sure.
And
it's why I'm always, where is my book? Have I got a copy? Hang on, let me just grab a copy of my book. It's why I'm always harping on to people to get my book, because it can just save people so much grief, especially, as you say, if they have been in dodgy relationships and are not sure what to look for. And if they have, hang on, here we go. And if they are on the dating scene. This is my book.
Flags, romantic predators.
Red flags of romantic predators. It's on Amazon, and it is, I think it's about $9.99, and it's just so worth it, because, as I say in the blurb, it will save you years of heartache if you get it.
And that's the
because
biggest thing
once you know the flags, it is. And once you know the flags, when you see them, it makes it much, much harder to ignore it. Because you'll think, this doesn't feel good, and there's a red flag. Mm-hmm. Oh, and there's another red flag. And there'll always be multiple red flags that show up in the beginning.
Yes.
And what I've done with the book is talked about, I've put it into kind of 3 sections where I talk about, hang on, I can't see very well without my glasses. Hold on. What I talk about is the flags that you're likely to see, like right at the beginning of a relationship. So if you're in the dating stage, and I think, red flags 1 to 19 are initial meeting, early days. You're liable to see any of these flags. And it's not like you're going to see every one of them, or you're only going to see one, but you're going to see a good little number of them.
Yes.
And then we get to, when we get the next part is getting deeper into the relationship. So once you're past that initial dating stage, there's 7 more. There's 20 to 26 more red flags that you're more likely to see and spot and notice. And then we've got red flags in the devaluing stage, and that's 27 to 40 different red flags that you're likely to see. Now, you could, for example, red flag number 28 is they're jealous and controlling. You could see that much earlier on.
Oh,
but I had to do it in
myself.
You can see that earlier on. And you can also get gaslighting earlier on. But I just had to put it into some format that kind of made sense. And then the final ones are the red flags of narcissistic abuse, and that's 41 to 50. And this is where you get into the cognitive dissonance, toxic shame, guilt, trauma bonding, health issues, all of that lot. So it's broken into all these sections, and it's a good warning sign for anyone to not only look out for these in the beginning, but go through the whole book and see this is what you're going to be up against if you get involved with a narcissist, because nobody comes out unscathed.
And about how much are those books for sale at?
This book, I think it's $9.99 on Amazon.
Also, that's actually a very affordable book with a
Yeah,
lot
it's
of
cheap.
valuable information.
Yeah, it is. It's deliberately cheap because, I don't know anyone who actually ever gets rich off selling books on Amazon, unless, you're recommended by Oprah or someone. It's really more of, I wanted it at a cheap price to make it accessible to a lot more people.
Yes.
So yeah, definitely go and get that, especially if people are watching on the dating scene. Because once you know them, you'll spot them. You will say, there's a red flag. Let's be on the lookout for some more. Yeah.
I'll tell you, after I turned, once all this happened to me, I actually turned around and was so scared and nervous because everywhere I looked, I seen red flags. I mean, just absolutely everywhere. And that's what told me too. It's time to take some time to myself. The person, my friend, like I said, she's stood by my side the whole way through, and I've kept her at arm's length. I've looked at her and says, look, I trust nobody right now. I says, I see red flags in you. I see all of it in you. And I said, I don't know how much of it is real. She says, and of course it hurt her, but I'm sitting there going, you have to understand it's the trauma. And she, this person, and that's the cool thing about when someone understands it, they understand it.
Yeah.
And
sorry, just quickly there, because somebody has posted, I think in the group, I noticed a post. I didn't respond on it because I didn't have time between finishing a session I had before and then coming on here. But I think what he said is, is it me or does everyone think there's narcissists everywhere? Hang on, I'm just going to have a quick look in the group because it's a really valid point.
It is.
Because I remember, and I have been quite lucky in that I've not been in a narcissistic relationship myself. I just became very fascinated with the whole thing. Hang on one sec.
Psychology wise, it is a very interesting thing because both parties, the victim and the aggressor, both suffer from the same root things. Childhood trauma.
Hold on one sec. Yeah, so I was with someone who had borderline personality disorder, but it's not the same, and that's a debate for another day.
Yes.
But this person said I could shared experience. I'm seeing everyone as a narc. And he goes on to say he's someone who doesn't talk about healing and focuses on his faults, but she's also a survivor. So it's, hang on. I don't know where you've gone now.
Oh, I'm here.
Yeah, sorry. I pulled my screen up and I lost you, but you're back. So it's something that a lot of people have experienced, because when you discover what it is and what you're dealing with, and it's a thing. And I remember this myself because when I started studying it, which is probably about 6 or so years ago now, I started really niching into narcissistic abuse recovery. I had exactly the same feeling. I thought, how do you know? Maybe, and it was like, maybe he's a narcissist, maybe she's a narcissist.
Yes.
So you're kind of almost hyper vigilant about people for a while, but it only lasts a while.
Exactly.
But I can understand how people who've been in it like you have and discovered you had a narcissistic parent. I had another woman message me the other day and she said, I'm still trying to come to terms with this, that my mother was a narcissist and I was married to a narcissist. And she didn't even know until it's all just suddenly come together for her.
Well,
so when you're trying to process...
In the end, our comfort is we find the comfort in what we were raised in.
Exactly.
So that we gravitate towards that and it pulls us in.
You do. But then when you realize it and you're having to process it, it will take time. And you're not just going to be able to go out there and trust everyone. But once you start healing and you get your self-worth back and you're very solid again with who you are and with your boundaries and all of that, and you know the red flags, then it becomes much, much easier to navigate. And what happens as well is that after a while, and I've seen this happen with so many people, and particularly with people I've worked with, is you will start to repel. And it's all this like law of attraction stuff, the kind of energy you put out, you are not attracting negative people anymore, or you will spot them so fast and you just, get them out of your life. You don't get involved with them.
Yes,
And
as
then you
as I'd like
gradually,
to put it, is raise your vibration. They'll need a ladder.
you raise, that's right. That's right. You're raising your vibration, and then you're attracting better people.
Yes.
I mean, people who are not narcissists. So if you want to have a loving, healthy relationship, just spend a few minutes every day focusing on these qualities that you want the person, the next person you want to have in your life, your soulmate, whatever you want to call it. You spend a little time just thinking about all these good qualities. I want someone who's honest and who has integrity and who is compassionate. And you just focus on those qualities. You don't worry about what the person might look like or what they do for a living or any of that. You just say, to the universe, I want to attract a beautiful soulmate, someone who has these, and you focus on those characteristics and you just put that energy out into the universe. That's a really good way to.
When it comes to the healing process, about how long do you think that, someone goes through on the healing process? What do you think that they should give before they actually step into the world of dating?
I think it depends on person to person, but I really always recommend people not to rush back into dating. And I've seen people do it. They've gone straight back in. They are so in pain. They need something, so they'll start dating again just to get some love and attention, which is the wrong thing to do.
It is.
I think once you know that you're completely yourself again, it could be 3 months for someone. It could be 6 months. It could be a year. It could be longer. It's really difficult to say, but I always advise people not to rush into another relationship. I'd say give yourself at least 6 months, at least.
See, me, I was kind of scared. I've always been one of those people when it comes to growth or any of my goals. I'm somebody that I'm so focused on them that I just go, I knock them out now. I'm hyper focused.
Yeah.
And for a while, I actually got caught up intellectualizing the narcissist and the narcissistic abuse, and I was actually avoiding my growth for a second or two there.
Right.
And that was something that really hurt me, but I'm a very intellectual person. I may not have the greatest grammar. I may not speak perfect, all those stuff, but I absorb everything.
Yeah.
And it actually hindered me, and I'm sitting here going, well, how long should I give it? Well, it's one of those deals where I can see myself being able to track my thoughts now better.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things people look at me and they're like, Ken, you act like you're high on something. And it's like, no, you can drug test me anytime you want. They're like, no, what I mean is you're not able to stay on one subject. You're having focus issues. You're having all this stuff. And I don't know what's going on with you. Are you okay? And that let me know exactly. That was my key. That was the key thing that let me know exactly how deeply it hurt me. Because before all this, I was a businessman.
Yeah.
I owned an auto mechanic shop, all that stuff. And I had that deal. I had built this company from nothing. I didn't have, 800 credit score to take out a loan. I didn't have $100,000 sitting in the bank. I literally started out of a garage and grew it, and it was like, where'd that guy go? And it was all over those red flags. I missed all those red flags. I just wanted to be loved. I just wanted to not be alone no more. Here I am, the single dad in the world, just had to fight for custody for my son, and I was lonely, and this and
I understand. Yeah. I understand why people do it. I understand that need to go and get some comfort somewhere. But if you possibly can avoid it, then avoid it, because you are so vulnerable. And so many people I know have gone from one narc relationship straight into another one, as you did, Ken.
Yes.
It's shockingly common.
Yes.
For that to happen. So this is why healing yourself and get into a place where you are rock solid in your self-worth and who you are. You've got yourself back. You know what your boundaries are, your deal breakers. You know the damn red flags to look for. Then you can start going back out there.
Exactly.
And finding someone. But don't rush it. Do not rush it.
I quite enjoy my peace now, and I do have the friends that are around, and I get to have more value in the friendships that I didn't have when it was all, going on, because I literally got kind of taken away when she was getting ready to attack. It was like she literally took me away from everybody, looked at me and said, I did this for you. And I'm sitting here going, wait a minute. Now that I'm there, I see what she did. She was like, I'm getting ready to attack him. I need to get him away to where he can't hear everything that's going on.
Yeah.
And boom. And that's exactly what happened.
There you go. And that's the manipulation and the strategies that they engage so that they can get control over you. I mean, they're just so damn toxic. So toxic.
Yeah, they isolate you.
Yeah.
Those are red flags. You know, that's things that people don't understand, but that's a later red flag, I dare say. That's when they're actually trying to hook you and get ready to leave.
That's going to be more, that would be in like phase 2 of my red flags, the isolating you from family and friends.
Yes.
Because they don't want anyone of influence in your life or anyone who might see through them.
Exactly.
So they'll cut you off from all of them. And it's way more common than you think that they do this. It's shocking, really.
Yes. Maria, is there anything that you would like to touch base on? We got probably about 10, 15 more minutes if you'd like. And I'd like to let you take the reins a little bit, because I know you feel just as passionately as I do about this. And I've asked quite a few different things here of you. And I just figured it'd be nice to hand it over to you a minute.
Well, I'm happy talking to you, Ken, because you've always got such interesting insights on it and you've been through it and you've always got good advice and good questions. So, we did want to talk about healing, and I think we've kind of, in a roundabout way, we've covered quite a nice few touch points on healing. Some of the effects I've talked about is that loss of self that we've talked about.
Yes.
What also happens to people is they get the anxiety, the panic attacks, which you've also experienced.
Yes.
Depression, emotional distress.
Yes.
Sleepless nights, insomnia, all kinds of physical ailments, the lack of focus we talked about, the fogginess, and the feeling worthless, just feeling like a complete failure. So all of these things are what happen to people who've been dealing with narcissists. So it's really important that if anyone's watching and they're going through this, to recognize what's happening to them, recognize that this is psychological abuse, and it could be physical abuse, it could be sexual abuse, it can be financial abuse. With a narcissist, it can be any of them. It can be spiritual abuse. So it's to recognize what you are dealing with. That is absolutely the most important thing. And,
follow that, and you trust your intuition, follow your gut.
Absolutely. Number one, red flag number one, trust your gut. Even if you're in the relationship now and it's, it's too late because you didn't know the red flags, it's still not too late for you to start reclaiming your life.
That's right. That's where I have my own regret and all that stuff, is because I seen those red flags. My gut told me to not trust it, but I just couldn't give up. I looked at a person just like they were me.
Yeah. And then you beat yourself up because why didn't I listen to myself? Why didn't I listen to myself? And so to people who say that, and I know most of them do, we can always say, hindsight is 20/20 vision, but we didn't know then what we know now. So there's no point in beating yourself up and adding more stress on top of your shoulders. So recognize that you're in an abusive situation. Always learn as much as you can about it, which is what I always say. Knowledge is power, as you also said, Ken.
Yes.
And then you've got to find the way to healing. We always recommend you get a support group. Come and join my groups if you need to. And then look at what other steps you can take. If you can work with a therapist, really important. If you can't, there are a lot of good resources out there that do have free training, free healing resources. So you just got to be industrious and get onto Google and start looking for resources, because you are not powerless. You can do something.
Correct.
You absolutely can do something. And the power to heal, I always say, even with clients who work with me on my, my 30-day or my 90-day coaching and therapy programs, I even say to all of them, the healing comes from you. It comes from inside of you.
The light is in you.
Yeah, the light absolutely is in you, and the light is in every single person out there. It's just you've got to start believing in yourself and start believing I'm worth better than this. I'm worth more than this. I don't deserve this treatment. And I'm going to start fighting back. I'm going to start fighting back and getting myself back.
Yeah, you can't expect someone to fight for you if you can't fight for yourself.
No, exactly. But the problem is that you're so beaten down that you've got that fog, which is why you have to take these steps.
Yes.
Get a support group. Just getting into a support group will help you tremendously to know that this is the thing. I'm not alone. There are other people there I can talk to who can support me. Another thing I always say to people, if you can, is to confide in someone that you trust. Someone in whether it's your family, and you might be lucky and have a nice family. They might all be toxic narcissists, which is often the case, in which case you have to go outside the family. But make sure it's someone that you absolutely would trust with your life, that you can share this with. Because you know that old adage, it's a problem shared is a problem halved.
And I do want to add in on this one is, I understand for a lot of you guys out there that are in that survival stat of, being the victim, that it's hard to find someone to trust out there. And the big, and that you're probably reaching out to different people and they don't understand, your friends don't understand why you trust nobody. But there is, and you will find and you will locate that one person that will be there, who gets it and just knows you. That's your person.
Absolutely.
Because I know for me, I trusted nobody. It was so deep. I mean, honestly, Maria, I trusted you. I trusted more strangers than I trusted anybody that was around me because of what was going on. But I did have people that I did trust that were close to me. It's just, I always had that worry in my head that, oh my God, did they get to them too? And they're not saying nothing. Is this just going to take and bring me down to nothing?
That's it. You do become understandably paranoid about absolutely everything out there.
Yes. It's an absolute soul, brain mentality. It's an atomic bomb.
Yeah. It is. Which is why I said you've got to find someone who you can trust with your life, and you have to know with certainty, I can trust this person.
Exactly.
And they may not understand everything you're going through, because who can if they haven't been through it, let's face it, or unless they study it like I do and work with it. But it's just that act of sharing. It's like I'm not carrying that big heavy burden secret around fully on my own shoulders anymore. Just sharing with someone will really help.
Yes.
And that's why as well the group can be really helpful, because I know there are some people who don't even have that friend and they're like, I need some help, guys. And my group, I know that there's been lots of friendships that have formed, and these guys talk to each other in their own private chats and what have you. So, if it comes to it, you can always say, is anyone available to talk to me? There'll always be someone in the group who knows exactly where you're at in terms emotionally, and he'll be willing to talk. And they won't be judging you, and they'll know what you've been through.
And I'd like to intervene and say, too, this podcast, Maria and I both together have committed to doing this once a week. Am I wrong?
Right. Yes, no, you are right.
And I will be taking some guests on. So please don't be afraid to reach out. Reach out in the comments. I'll take your name, all your information down. And if you're willing to speak out, you can join the podcast with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Or if people have questions, Ken, around any issues around narcissistic abuse, recovery, healing, if they have questions they want to put to either of us to discuss, bring it on. We'd be happy to.
Yes,
because
my
this
comments
is very
are
much
always open.
This is very much an open-ended, unscripted chat that we're having, really. So it's very much, whatever comes up as we go along, we'll talk about. Yeah,
exactly. And also, if you look into the bio of the podcast here, into the description, you will find links to Maria's Facebook groups for narcissistic abuse for both men and women. And you will also find links to, her personally, as well as the Light and the Darkness. Any of those links, we can direct you. I'm actually going to include the links in the next, podcast. I'm actually going to include her links to her books on Amazon. And I'll tell you, I've had a couple of people reach out to me to try to get to Maria, and a couple of them have kind of phased and dipped on out, which it happens. But at the same point, if anybody needs to, if you need to talk, if you need anything, just reach out. There's somebody there. I'm putting resources in the descriptions and on my pages everywhere. And I can tell you, if you reach out to one of Maria's pages, Maria is extremely, extremely active in her pages. I have never once not seen her jump on other than when she was ill from her surgery. And we can all understand that. But other than that, for a year straight, I've seen you, Maria, very active in all your groups. And that's a handful.
Yeah, it is. That's why I want to start doing the TikTok videos, the short ones, because I think they're very informative. But I'm going to do them as like, I do them and set them on my computer, and then I can share them to different platforms. So it's not like, because Facebook doesn't like it if you share your TikTok video, apparently.
Yeah.
So I will be posting the short ones as well in the group, in my Facebook group, and I'll probably put them on the YouTube channel as well, just to keep putting stuff out there, because people need to know these things. There's so much to know.
Well, and the thing is as we progress as a society, things become, things open up. We become more aware to things than what we were 30, 40 years ago. It's like somebody turning around and they got upset over, or their mother got upset over their, healing from their childhood trauma. And the mom turned around and looked at him and says, well, kids didn't come with this, instruction manual and all these things, just got mad at them. And I says, look, we didn't know then what we know now.
Yeah, exactly.
But the difference is, are we willing to make it right? Are we willing to step up and look into that dark portion of us that's scary but can't hurt us anymore, and dig it all away to let our light shine? And that's where I came up with the light in the darkness.
I love it. Yeah. I love it.
I had a lot of people that through my healing, it's funny because I'll tell you a quick story. I was sitting out donating plasma probably a week ago, and I had a guy kind of, as I'm editing, asked me what I was doing, and we got to talking a little bit, and all of a sudden I just triggered him, and I'd learned that, I'm good at triggering people. And then I was able to take and reflect, and I was like, something, I am the light, and they've got the light in them too. The difference is I've uncovered, and I've worked at uncovering that darkness to be able to relate to people so that they can find their own. And I think that's what you're doing too, Maria.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, absolutely. Just getting the information out there as well is so important. It really is. So we will keep up the good work.
Yes, I agree. Well, Maria, I'm going to take and let you go. I've got some kiddos to go take and wrangle up here. And as always, we'll see you next Monday.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you again. And yes, I'll see you next Monday, Ken. Take care.
Take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. Well, everybody, as you can tell, it was another good podcast. Had some technical difficulties at the beginning, but I wanted to reach out to everybody, and I wanted to tell everybody, through narcissistic abuse and any type of toxic abuse in a relationship, friendship, whatever, it can mentally destroy you, and it can really put you in a dark spot. Please don't be afraid to reach out. If you look in the links on my pages, if you look in the links in my bio, you can find resources. And I'm going to keep updating this more and more every day. The more I find, the more I'll put on there. And Lord, if you're looking at what they call unaliving yourself, which we all know what that is, please reach on out. Please get help. There is help out there for you. You don't have to be alone. You are worth it. You are worth choosing yourself, and nobody wants to live without you. You may not see it yet. You may not know it. And I can tell you this because a year ago, I was in those same shoes, and it was extremely hard. But I obviously am here. There was a light that shined through me just like one will shine through you. So please reach out. Get some help. It's okay to be where you're at. It's okay to be hurt. There is nothing wrong.